Hello friends, I am recording this video from my office at a time when the entire globe is severely affected by the outbreak of COVID-19, as the entire world is adversely affected and the economies are suffering badly. Being into the equity markets for the last 20 years and having witnessed lots of economic cycles, a lot of my friends and relatives are asking me the future of Indian economy, especially after the lockdown, quarantine of a large population part and a big stimulus package announced by Government of India. The word quarantine originates from the Venetian dialect of Italian language and it means 40 days. Italy was among the first nations to propagate the practice of patient isolation. But unfortunately, the country that pioneered the practice of isolating victims of ancient epidemic ignored the rules during outbreak of COVID-19 and is paying the price of ignoring the past with massive fatalities. I am sure over the past few days you have read enough about the pandemics of the past, especially why they may have big takeaways for countries like India fighting coronavirus. Although the Indian government chose to go for a lengthy lockdown, the socio-economic cost it had to pay is huge, and to mitigate the effect, the government was forced to offer a stimulus package. Now, coming to India's economic stimulus package, which will be among the biggest in the world, that is at rupees 20 trillion, which is close to 10% of the GDP, it will go a long way in getting the economy back on track. But it's important to understand two things. First, this should not be a quick fix. We will need the follow up reforms. Second, it should be implemented well. Another important point is that we must not lose sight of the long term. India needs massive investment in infrastructure, healthcare, technology, and education. The COVID 19 stimulus package is a good beginning, but we must continue to invest in the future if we are to bounce back stronger than even before. The good news is that the government has the room to borrow for this purpose. There is enough liquidity in the economy. Interest rates are favorable too. As long as we don't go overboard with the borrowing, we should be fine. As is always the case in India, the best intentions can be messed up by poor implementation. That must not happen this time around. We have taken the correct steps to get out of this slowdown. Now we must see it through. It is very good that our Honorable Prime Minister spoke about supply chains. China is a dominant force here. However, we have seen many MNCs wanting to shift a part of their supply chain out of China, and India will certainly be a beneficiary. Executing the stimulus package while keeping the long term economic interest in mind will be the key. It's also a fact that India's importance in the global supply chain has never looked better. Our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi himself referred to that. Most of us are looking at the historical pandemic data to compare it with the current crisis, but there is a little attention being paid to what happened a few years after the crisis. Yes, pandemics are known to shake up countries, population, and economies. The impact of this shake-up on global stock market is already visible, but the real coronavirus shake-up, which could be the most potent, is unlikely to be in the stock markets reflecting the industrial strength of the country. Rather, like in case of some past pandemics, it could give birth to yet another industrial revolution. You heard it right. I'm talking about Industrial Revolution 4.0. The bubonic plague, for instance, gave rise to massive shortage of labor. The scarcity of labor led to a change in the agricultural technology in the early 1600s. The adoption to the initial shock led to a durable rise in wages. Higher income levels led to more demand and eventually gave rise to the Industrial Revolution. Thus, pandemics have had profound economic effects, but in the longer term, the economic effects can be positive. Is the assumption that coronavirus could lead to such massive socio-economic change too far-fetched? Not at all. In fact, the outbreak of coronavirus exposed the underbelly of the fragile global supply chains over-dependent on China, and therefore global manufacturers are bound to seek geographical diversification of resources and imports. This could mean a massive change in the way businesses are run. Now, the questions which arise are, what does this mean for the Industrial Revolution 4.0? What would that mean for India? Will this shakeup be beginning for rebirth of India? And the answer to these questions is right here. I strongly believe India will be the alternative for most of these countries. Indian auto ancillaries, textile, chemical companies, pharma, R&D contract manufacturers will all be the major beneficiaries when this shift happens. China's export in 2019 in US dollar terms were around 2.4 trillion. In comparison, India's export account for just 12% of that. Even if 10% of the MNCs currently dependent on China see India as a viable alternative, our exports can almost double. Imagine the positive impact that will have on the rebirth of India. To cater this demand, multiple factories will be needed, many workers will be needed. The upside for the Indian economy will be huge. This is where one must be focused on finding strong businesses with capacity to take advantage of this huge opportunity. So stay positive and stay safe. Thank you.